Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged podcast. This is a very interesting episode. I think what we're witnessing is genuinely another industrial revolution. I don't even want to count which one it might be. I mean, you can say the industrial revolution that started in the sort of mid 19th century was the kind of first industrial revolution. You could say that. But all the industrial revolutions we've had, however many there are, I would say there's one. So I'd say this is the second industrial revolution. The first one was entirely 100% dependent on fossil fuel, coal initially, then oil and gas. And that's what we've built the world that we know now. We built it on those fuels. And what we're looking at now is the absolute stinkily tiny little beginnings of possibly an alternative to that. An alternative to burning fossil fuels that clearly upset some people so much they rant and scream and rave, and they're convinced that any alternative is a con and a rip-off and a way of crushing poor people into submission, which is odd. It is an odd thing to work out. But, obviously the fossil fuel industry is fighting like the dirty devils they are to stop that. But the person I'm talking to today, it is, I think, remarkable because it's not some outsider, startup, renegade, sort of person who wants to disrupt things. It's someone right on the inside of the automotive industry. Darren Palmer is vice president of electric vehicles at Ford Motor Company. And essentially, Ford are the oldest big car company in the world. I mean, they absolutely started, I suppose you could call that the second industrial revolution, the mass production. Up to then, even, like if you think of trains and ships and bridges made of steel, which the Industrial Revolution facilitated that, they were kind of built, they were all one-offs. They weren't mass produced, but Henry Ford introduced mass production where you just churned out thousands of the same thing using the same components. And in their factories, they literally had iron ore and wood delivered at one end and cars came out the other end. I mean, that was how they did the entire process in their one factory. And Ford are still in that area. Dearborn, Michigan is their headquarters and where they started, but they're now all over the world and make millions of vehicles. But the transition they're making to electrification is mind-boggling in scale. And for those of you who aren't aware of it, the vehicle that we do mention a great deal, the Ford F150 Lightning, which I've had a look at and had a little go in, is just, for anyone outside the United States or possibly Australia, it is a bit confusing because it's a huge, huge vehicle. It's a pickup truck or a ute, and it's enormous. And it's electric now. It has, I think Darren mentioned, a 130 kilowatt hour battery. You can run an American house off that car, and literally you can plug it into your house. It's a very important point. That's what's critically important about what Ford are doing. You can run your American house for 10 days, I think, which means you could run a European house for 2.5 weeks. You could run a house in Africa for probably a month off that vehicle, if in the event of a power cut. So really a substantial amount of energy that you could use to power your life. And such a critically important aspect of electric vehicles, which we will get into. But Darren's an absolute charmer, really interesting guy. Really easy to talk to, really good communicator, knows the business backwards, knows what challenges lie ahead for Ford, knows what their opportunities are. They're bringing out a lot of cars in the next few years. I will let Darren talk about it. But as you know, if you watch the Fully Charged show on YouTube, I did love the Ford Mustang Mach-E. It's a really nice car. I see a lot of them about. They're pretty popular. They're pretty hard to get hold of now because everything they've got, all the orders they had, they can't. They're still fulfilling them. The Ford F-150, insane amount of orders for that car. And the main thing, as you'll hear, the main thing that attracts people to it is the fact that it is vehicle to X, V2X capable. It can send its power out as well as taking power in. Fascinating. Really interesting discussion. Really hope you enjoy this episode. I'm going to say it now. If you do enjoy this episode, tell your mates about it. Subscribe. and spread the word, because this is really, I think I'm amazed at the opportunities we're getting, the people we're talking to. It's really, really impressive. So please welcome to the Fully Charged podcast, Darren Palmer, Vice President of Electric Vehicles at the Ford Motor Company. Darren, thank you so much for joining us. This is a bit of a thrill for me. Before I even started making Fully Charged, I was fascinated by some of the early electric vehicle experimentation I'd seen in California in the early noughties, and it didn't make sense to me. I thought, this is bonkers. Why are people doing this? But it caught my attention. And then when I came back to the UK, I read up a lot about the early days of the automotive industry, particularly of Ford, particularly of Thomas Edison, and the connection between Thomas Edison and Henry Ford is remarkable. I mean, I think it's a thing that a lot of people don't know. And the fact that one of the things that really helped me remember it is that Thomas Edison lived in a place called Llewellyn Mansion, which is handy for me. So I can remember the name of his house. And I've recently, a couple of years ago, just before lockdown, I stayed with friends who live on the other side of the Hudson, and I was desperate. I didn't have time to go to New Jersey because it's a museum, I think, isn't it now? And you can go and see it. But that history of really the absolute beginnings of the automotive industry as we know it now, 100% Ford did that. Henry Ford was way ahead of anyone else. But the discussions that went on about whether vehicles would be powered by combustion engines or electric motors, I had no idea of that history, that it was really touch and go which one would be a success in that sort of early 1900s.
It's amazing. You're right. There's a huge history there, and there was an electric vehicle like the Model T way back. In those days, It was a wet battery, but they were some of the first vehicles ever shown. But that's not the way the world went at that time.
Yeah.
And it's been an extremely exciting journey for us in the last 5 years, because we had to turn from a gas car company, petrol, diesel, into an electric car company. And that journey is something I've been privileged to have a front seat for. And I think it's amazing. I think it's a historic journey culminating in, at the moment, at the F150 Lightning, which I think might get credited with being the vehicle that turned EVs mainstream. Yeah. And there's many reasons for that. I say that, one of which is the price and the access to it, all the way down from the Pro all the way to the top, and the things it does and the amount of take-up it's had. So that's been a very exciting journey for us. And that was phase one, if you like, of the journey. We're just entering phase two of that journey now.
Right. Because I have yet to actually drive an F150 Lightning. I sat in one at our show in San Diego earlier this year. And I mean, you'll know, because I can tell you're a bit of a Brit in the background, but, to climb in a vehicle that size, it's just like, oh, this is huge. But it was amazing. And the amount of attention that car got at that show was extraordinary.
I quite enjoyed, as an engineer, I really enjoyed how we were able to give rides inside a car show with that, because of course no emissions, and that vehicle, you think you know how it's going to feel, and even the most hardened EV journalists that I know for a long time, they are shocked when they get in it, because that vehicle does a 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. It's insane.
It's just
of course it's set up really about its capability, not just for that performance. You don't really race around in a truck so much, but it's very shocking. And how fast it reacts to you, like a lot of electric cars, it reacts in a fraction of a second, and that's what you're feeling. Very addictive. And once you've experienced that, you don't want anything else. But that's not even the thing that attracted people to it.
Right.
So that's all part of the story, really, for us. We tried to make cars that use the technology and do things that petrol gas never could do. Yeah. That's our plan, and we developed that with a team called Team Edison that really gets the heart first. And actually, although the F-150 will outrun a Raptor, one of the most sought-after trucks in the world, and it's much cheaper, that isn't the thing that attracted people. How amazing. Right. It was actually the fact that it's a mobile power station, and it can run a whole working crew for days or it can power your house for up to 10 days.
Right.
And the fact it has this frunk in the front where it's the size of a normal
Which
SUV's
is
rear space.
huge. Yeah.
That is what attracted everybody. And we hoped it might. We found that during our human-centric work at the beginning of the project, but we hoped it might, and it really did resonate. And that with the affordability and accessibility, that's what seems to have been the success factor for that vehicle.
Yeah. Now, I mean, the people I spoke to at our San Diego show, where we talked about the TV commercial, was it on for the Super Bowl? I wasn't there, but yeah. So that TV commercial, when I saw that, I went, that is a step. That, you know, it had all the kind of standard things that you would do to sell a powerful SUV. You know, it had the tough guy behind the wheel going off road and the woman going down the road and all that. But then when there's a shot where a guy pulls into his house, plugs the car in, goes in the house, you see the city have a power blackout and his house comes on. And the amount of people I spoke to who said, that's what did it for me. You know, the fact that I can use that car, it was a really critical step forward. And I mean, that technology has been discussed. I have a vehicle to grid unit at my house, but it only works on very few vehicles, of which I don't have. So
there's actually so that carrying around that power with you is a really important part of electric vehicles. So we have it in our ETransit as well, and it makes new businesses. So I heard about a business where somebody puts a box on the back of an F-150, and they come to your house, and instead of getting a takeaway food, if you have, say, a few couples over, instead they come to your house and they cook you the meal in their mobile kitchen, which can be silent, uses electricity, so no noise for anybody, clean, and then they bring the food in and you have fresh food, and it doesn't really cost more than the takeaway food for free couples.
Right.
What a wonderful business. And all electronically linked, of course. And I thought that's a great business. And that business was supported by the truck. So, and we're seeing those pop up everywhere. Even people come to your home to do some building work. They don't need to run a generator or plug into the customer's house. They can be self-contained. And I mean, that powers nothing compared to driving. So it'll run a crew of 13 people for 3 days at a building site and still have energy to go backwards and forwards to home. So that is really compelling stuff. And that we noticed that's what people are really tying to.
Yes. No, it is. It is I didn't get it until I saw it. So, because not living in the land of pickups or utes as they are in Australia, it's kind of. I thought, I don't even know why that is. And I had driven the Mustang Mach-E here, which I loved, and saw the kind of development of that over the last few years. And we reviewed it on the show. But as soon as I saw the F1, as soon as I got out the plane in America and saw pickups, I went, oh yeah, pickups, I've forgotten. And they're everywhere. Everywhere you look, there's pickups. And then you suddenly see the F-150, and it makes so much sense.
Oh, that's the best-selling pickup for 47 years. And I've been living here for 5 years now. I didn't understand pickups in America before I came.
Yeah.
But, having watched it now, they because of the size they are, you have the size of an entire SUV in the front, a spacious SUV, and then the extra utility on the back, which supports an active lifestyle. So I didn't have trucks before, but now I have a Lightning. The front space is for the normal family work or the groceries and these things, but the rear is for leisure and fun and a canoe and a boat and pick up things. You never have to worry about flexibility to do anything you want. And that is what I think people love about them here. Do you know it's the best-selling product in the world? So it's not just a best-selling truck, it's a best-selling vehicle of any kind in the world. Right. So that's amazing, isn't it? And they are certainly loved by people here. But they represent for me a move to mainstream. So they were our best foot forward, our third EV after the Mach-E and the Lightning, to show you really can pull mainstream. And that's what we were meant to do. And that's phase one of our vehicles. We're now working on the next gen vehicles, which move the game forward. But that was the one, I think, that really made a difference. We had 200,000 pre-orders, and we're not predictions of this anywhere. We tried to work this out before, and all the predictions we had EVs expanding, but not at that rate. And I
Yeah.
believe that it's like smartphones. People didn't know they wanted the smartphone until the smartphone came. And so when they saw it, they wanted it. And so all the predictions had it around 40,000 or so. And then we had over 200,000. We had to switch it off because we weren't ready for that. Now, next year, we will be we've taken the factory, expanded it. Actually, while it's producing, we're expanding. We're building outside the walls, doubling the size, and then we cut the walls down later, and they're all robotic carriers, and they will then move into the larger factory.
Wow.
And we'll produce over 150,000 a year run rate by the end of next year. So
just the F150 Lightning.
Just the Lightning, yeah.
Wow.
So just for one car. So that's amazing. And then, and we offered them all price ranges from the start because we wanted it to be for everybody. And with the incentive, it was really the same price as gas. And so there were no excuses. And I was fascinated to see what people hung on to because all the excuses are gone. And it was not the power and the speed. It was all about that usability. Then, of course, the first time they drive it, they fall in love, and then you can't get them out of it. So 91% of customers who have a Mach-E tell all their friends and family to get one. So I'm waiting to see the figures on Lightning. I trust it's even higher. But that fascinated me about these vehicles. We saw that before we started on this endeavor. When people move over, nobody goes back. And the only product, the one I liken that to, are smartphones. People may not have known they wanted it before. Once a friend or family member tells them and they get it, that they never go back. And it's the same with these electric vehicles.
Yeah. Now, I think if you got a smartphone 10 years ago for the first time, and then you went, oh, yeah, I don't want this. I'm going to go back to my flip phone with buttons. You're not going to do that.
And at the same time, when you ask somebody before they made that switch and you ask them, do you need a keyboard? They would tell you with all their might that they have to have a keyboard, and you don't understand why they have to have it. So because they're completely convinced. And I call it a false friend. It's like learning a language where a word is similar and you think it's similar. You look at these electric cars and you think they're like your gas car, but with an electric motor. And they're no more like that than a smartphone is like your flip phone. They may look a little bit like them sometimes, 4 wheels and a steering wheel, but the ownership is nothing like that. And an example I give is I had one for 2 years now. I did not get into my car one time in 2 years when it wasn't automatically set to the perfect temperature. Why would I? I don't even have to pick my phone up. I just speak a keyword and say prepare the car, and it's ready for me in 2 minutes. So why would I get in? So I never got in a hot or a cold car or one covered in snow or ice in the last 2 years. And I never went to a gas station in 2 years. And that experience is amazing. If you try to explain to someone with an electric car, go back to gas and try to explain that, it would sound ridiculous.
So you might sit on your driveway with the engine running, with the fans going for 10 minutes to defrost it. I mean, all those things I've forgotten. What happens is after a few years, you genuinely forget, and then someone will give me a ride in their car, and I go, oh yeah, I forgot you had to do this.
Right, and that let alone the power and the smoothness and the quietness. We had an SUV recently, a very luxurious SUV, and I found it too noisy because I used to think it was the most comfortable car I'd ever been in, and now I think it's too noisy because once you've got electric, it's a change. So it's amazing the technology and what it's going to lead to, because we're making those cars over-the-air updatable, and they're a computer on wheels. And the Mach-E, for example, the Mach-E has getting updates right now, and we're adding gaming, we're adding video streaming, and other services and to the vehicle, so it gets better over time. And we have a team working on that to give constant updates. So people love that. They feel like their product that they bought got better and better over time.
Yeah. And I mean, is that because I don't know what the sales are like for the Mach-E? I mean, all I know is I see them around a lot in the UK. I mean, they're quite a common sight now. So, and that's done well as well, has it? I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's sold out really 2 or 3 times more than we have. Again, we didn't put enough of them down because, and we are now doing that. So on the Mach-E next year, we significantly increased the volume, more than double. and then the ETransit, again, actually more like triple, and then the Lightning also a similar amount. So we're massively increasing capacity next year, which we need to because all of them are completely sold out. The Lightning, we're still working through the reservations we had, the 200,000, and as soon as that's free, we're going to open it up again. But I rather suspect the minute we open it again, it'll be sold out again. Yeah. So we're trying to keep ahead of it, but the take-up is much faster than we thought. So I think by the end of next year, with that faster run rate, they should start to become more available. And the Mac E, again, there'll be many more available, I think.
Right. And then I'm presuming, I mean, because I would love to hear a bit more about Team Edison, because you've obviously thought this through really before you started manufacturing the cars. You kind of, which I think it's a really important point that I can't help wanting to underline, that there's plenty of legacy manufacturers who've gone, okay, we can do an electric car. Let's use one we're already making, and we'll take the engine and gearbox out and we'll put in a battery and a motor, and some of those are really good and some are debatable. And, some have been very popular and some less, but it doesn't feel like it's been that the discussion you've clearly had with it internally at Ford has happened that much outside. I could argue that some of I don't even need to mention names, but some of the newer startup car companies that have emerged, particularly in China, I think that's the kind of where we're seeing the most of them, have possibly thought this through and going, do you think we should try that? Should we do this? We ought to try that, sort of before they start making them. But was that the role of Team Edison, was to kind of look at the big picture, not just this is a car, how it works when people have it, we don't care, but we're making it and it does this. It sounds like you thought much wider than that.
Yeah, well, we actually said, and we're on record for saying this, that we're an over 100-year-old company, and we were thinking about electric cars. We did a Ford Focus EV, and it had 100 miles, and 100 miles is what most people do in a day or less. So that may have been okay. Well, it turns out not okay, because it's not how people think. So we were maybe on track to do another electric, slightly better. And then we said, hey, we think that this deserves a different approach. So we either buy an electric car company, but then you have to work out how to integrate that with a large company, or we'll try something different. And so we tried something, it was called Team Edison, and a guy called Ted Canis set it up with the drive of the CEO and the leadership team, and said, let's set up like a startup company and work out where to play and how to win before we are under any pressure to deliver. Let's work out what we think customers might want. And so we set up and we moved out of the main buildings nearby. We ended up in a beautiful place in Corktown in Detroit in the end. Beautiful hosiery factory, just all glass windows, industrial, beautiful. And we put together a diverse team, small, with very open-minded people from different walks of life. And we operated like a startup. We went out to many startups, and it was amazing how a big company like Ford has contacts into all of these companies, because we have employees who work there and moved around. So we got into Apple and Google and Amazon and all these companies and the startup incubators in Irvine and California. And then we went to China, and we got into Tencent and Alibaba, and it was amazing. We went to watch all these people working, and so what do we take from it? And then we set ourselves up in a similar way, very flat, no structure like that, no desks, no offices, everybody's equal, no parking space, back to a small company. And then we worked on the problems together as a cross-functional team. But we really was focused on customers. So we had human-centered design consultants with us that said, get out and speak to customers quickly rather than sit in your room and make a strategy. So we were in all those places I mentioned, and we were talking to customers. And they were telling us about their products and what they thought about them. And we realized that the technology potential is that with a new technology, you can make it do things you could never do before. Like an iPhone had multi-touch screen, but it was what it was done with that multi-touch screen. It made it into an internet device that made it so special. So here we've got this electronic technology, but it turns out that many of the customers moving to this, they want a tech product. And that means They want it evolving continuously. They want it to do automated functions, including self-drive. They want screens that can grow with them and give them entertainment and music and video and other things. And so we came back and said, hey, we have to find a technology play and in the areas that Ford are strong to make it a Ford. We're not trying to be somebody else. So what could it be for us? And after a while, we said, we worked out where we're going to play. So we said, hey, a two-row crossover is a very large place where it's very popular with customers. So it's an obvious one to start. Then the commercials are very obvious to us. We're very strong in commercial and we saw benefits. And then the F-150. And it came across, it wasn't long before we worked out that our place in a mid-size SUV had to be emotional, and it was to be a Mustang. And we knew that long before the rest of the world did. And we came to the conclusion, this has to be a Mustang. Right. And that was very shocking to a lot of people. But when we saw what Mustang was really about, it's really about freedom and emotion. Of course, it became associated with V8s and so on, but really it's about freedom because nobody felt worse when they sat down in a Mustang. And that's what it's about. And so it also turned out that people are moving, that's a very me car, and people, younger people, they want my tribe. So bring their friends with them and be part of the experience. And so you put those together, you've got an emotional, be with my tribe, fun, sporty vehicle with technology. We're like, wow, that's it. And so we started drawing it and we were amazed how it looked. And then we rapidly changed over. We were going to build this Focus EV number two, and we changed it over to this Mustang. And then we prepared to show the company. And there was a day when we had to go and approve this in the company. And it was very shocking to a lot of people. But luckily, we had very open-minded leadership, all the way to Bill Ford, who was very open-minded to it and said, I get it. I understand Mustang Coupe and what it has been, but I also understand what the future is and what this can be. And so we went for it. And it was a risk, but we put our heart and soul into the car to make it feel fun. And I think it's worked pretty well. So a GT Mach E is an amazing product. I like my Coupe Mustang as well. I have one. I love that too. But every day I'm going to use the electric, and the performance is just outstanding. So that's how it came about, and from then on we said every one of them needs to do things that you couldn't imagine, and they need to be better than any gas car before, petrol or diesel. That's the mission. And my new boss's mission is Doug Field, and we now work in Model E in Ford. And his initiative, if this car's the next car is a little bit like cars today, the project's cancelled. Right, it has to be insanely great, and that's the bar we're working to. And so our next gen products, that's the bar we're working to. We ask ourselves that every day. Yeah,
that's because that's what you've got in the pipeline, and I'm not asking you to reveal any of that, obviously, that's because I'm sure you've got lots going on. But I mean, is that in terms of time? When do you see next model launches? Because I haven't kept up with that. I don't know if you've announced that yet. I certainly
we haven't announced that yet. There's launches all the time. So, for example, there's 7 vehicles coming in Europe. 7 new vehicles in the next 2 years.
And that's 7 new electric vehicles.
Yeah, 7 new vehicles.
Okay. Wow.
That's in Europe. So there's a small SUV coming, another small SUV, and then there's the Transit E is there already. Then there's the Tornado, the small custom Transit, the 1 ton. Amazing product, lovely product in EV. And then there's a Tornado version of that. And then there's a Puma electric, which is more with a converted electric, but a great price and very loved vehicle. And then more coming. So we got a great lineup coming. And being Ford, they need to give great value for people. They need to be exciting. This is a given, but they also need to be affordable for people, and they are. And Transit, we're very proud of Transit. We're 92% of the commercial market for Transits already now in the US. So that's amazing to me, and it's sold out really significantly in Europe. That's why we're increasing it so fast. We could sell a lot more of them. that's really important for us. I think we'll be the number one electric commercial very soon there.
Right.
And then this little 1-ton van is just a lovely, lovely product. So there's many new vehicles coming even in the next 2 years.
Right, because I think that is I've banged on about it lots in the past few years, but the focus, the general sort of press focus and the discussion is around private cars, is around cars, but actually where I see the shifts happening even faster is in commercial vehicles, and particularly light commercial vehicles like transits. Clearly you can see that companies have gone, oh, hang on, they look at their spreadsheet and go, how much do we? Oh, that's what we spend on diesel in a year, say. And then since we've been running these electric ones, oh, right, let's get rid of the diesel.
So we have a Ford Pro division now, led by Ted Canis, my ex-boss, and he's all about delivering for those customers, their commercial.
Yeah.
And of course, increasingly, they have seen already what an electric vehicle could do. Now, you do have to get the charging right. And so they have a division there that does charging for people, because if you get it right, certain businesses I've seen, they pay back from the first day. Can you believe that? Not the first day they pay back.
Right.
And then from then on, your maintenance is much less and the cost to run much, much less. Yeah. But if you get it wrong and you're charging at the wrong time with the wrong it can be worse than petrol. So that's really important. And they're leading that in now. But we're seeing customers. We actually held a forum with a lot of our current customers, and we showed them before we launched, hey, the margin improvement with these vehicles is so great that if your competitors get one and you don't, they can wipe the business out, because your entire margin they can save. And now you can't even operate at a profit level. So we shared that with our partners and said, we really think you should look at this before we go to market. And many of them signed up already to get vehicles. And then, of course, we were sold out. So that's why we're increasing production so much. But commercials are a no-brainer, because they got a very set route as well, and they often charge in a depot at night and so on. And we can configure the vehicles to work for them and be reliable, because, of course, it's really important to them that it's reliable.
Very important. But what's fascinating about going back to the big picture in a way, is that I think this is why I was very interested to speak to you, is because of Ford's historical role and being really the first company on the planet to mass produce cars, that whole legacy that you've got of that. And then to transition that. So, over 100 years, you've been making combustion cars, and then it's the sort of friction of that transition that has fascinated me more and more, the more I've learned about the automotive industry, that how you do that, because it's huge. I don't even know, but you must have large factories whose entire role is making combustion engines. And then you're going, well, what do we do with that?
Yes. So, our business has been mass production. And if you watch a production plant at full pelt, some of our vehicles, you have 2,000 to 3,000 parts coming together just in time every 40 seconds.
Yeah.
And so watching that happen, and then saying, I want to change all of that completely, you get the scale of this. And you have to have the intent first, which that's what we did with Team Edison. And then you start to see how that can work. And then we gain confidence with the customer reaction to those products. And then we said, right, we're full in. So we're investing $50 billion.
I saw that number. I just read that is.
It's a small country,
It is,
and not just the money, but imagine actually spending $50 billion.
Yeah.
What you have to do to spend that money. We have multiple plants and multiple battery plants. We're spending nearly $12 billion for the plant in Tennessee here that has 2 battery plants, recycling on site, so we can recycle batteries, and in one day we hope to recycle all of the materials in the batteries.
Yeah.
And then the biggest plant, I think, ever in the history of America. I think it's the biggest investment in a vehicle plant. And then that will be able to create products in a more efficient way that bring the price down. Because, of course, we need to get them to mainstream prices for people.
Yeah.
And we're going to. So in that time frame, that's in the 25, 26 time frame, we'll be launching those vehicles from there. And we can achieve much better pricing for people with functionality on EV. So that's the goal.
Yeah.
But we had to relearn a lot of things, and we also had to increase software. So that's been a very hard thing for a legacy company, and we realized it early on. We had to put a lot of focus to get the HMI, human machine interface, in the Mach-E, which is fairly unique in the market, and it's just now in the Lightning as well. And that was really difficult for us. It's got a CarPlay and Android Auto implementation that is, I think, the best in the industry.
Works beautifully.
Amazing. Wireless as well. So we did that. That's now, and we had to put teams in place to regularly update those vehicles. And we're going to update that entire interface to that vehicle next month, and then roll out across the globe. And it's a major improvement. I believe only one company has done that in the past, as Tesla. And we're going to do that next month. So we're really excited about that. And we rolled out hands-free Blue Cruise driving over the air to our customers this year, which was really difficult for us, but we did it. And now we've split the company into two. So we have Model E and we have Ford Blue. And Model E, we also hired as a company some of the best Silicon Valley and tech people in the world. My boss is Doug Field. He's very famous in the industry. I think one of the best technical developers of electric cars on the planet. And we have other people, Robert Bedichuk, who did a lot of the hardware in the iPhone, and Sammy. And we have some amazing skills. And the goal is they are put together with Ford, and then we see what we produce together. So my boss said to me last week, we recently took some tech leaders around our factories, and they said, "Oh my God, I have no idea how you do that." And we said, "Well, we have no idea how you do what you do in software, but imagine when you put the two together." And so that's exactly what we're doing right now, and that's what that 50 billion's for, and our next series of cars. So I'm really excited to see what cars are going to come out Ford in the next 4 years.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely fascinating. And I mean, presumably then you are able to, for instance, retrain people whose entire working lives has been making combustion engines. But I mean, is there a sort of a scheme within Ford to retrain them to make, electric drivetrains, back axles with motors and, the kind of hardware of an electric car? I mean,
absolutely. I mean, we'll be bringing more things in-house. So some of our old plants that used to make gearboxes, we can now bring in-house and start making electric motor gearboxes or electric motors. So the motors, in some of like the Mustang Mach-E, we're bringing that in-house. We bought it for the issue, and then that now is brought in-house. And we've built that expertise over many decades as well. So yes, and then we can reuse some of our facilities to do that. So the plant that makes Mustang Mach-E was completely refitted. That used to make Fiesta, and it was refitted. The plant that used to make Fiesta in Europe will now make the new SUV. So we're able to refit our plants, and we've got lots of other facilities around the world as well on engines and gearboxes. And the goal is bring things in house and use the people and the facilities that we've got, because they're our employees are our skills, are our future, and they're so important to us. I mean, the Mustang, the F150 Lightning, that story to me was very uplifting, because we had a much less volume, and when we said last Christmas we said, "Oh my word, I think we need triple." And I've never heard those words in my career before. I'm like, how are we going to ask to make triple? That when you know that 3,000 parts have got to come together less than a minute, and I need triple of that, please. How could you even get your head around it? And the team took that on, and in 3 weeks, they came back with a plan that said, "I think we know how to do it," and I couldn't believe it. And we gave them what they needed, and they even had to work out how to build a new factory around the one that's currently running. And can you believe that? It's a symphony. But I guess that's what an OEM can do, like Ford. It's something, that's something we can do. We're pretty good at. And I saw it in action. So we're expanding the capacity of all three of those vehicles massively in 1 year. And that means the supply and the batteries and all those. In fact, we're going up to 600,000 EVs by the end of next year.
Right.
It's like a tenfold increase each year,
Yeah.
and we have already bought the materials for that.
Right. That's what I was going to ask about that.
She's already secured the material for that, and we're going up 2 million in 4 years' time. 2 million units by the end of 26 globally, and Lisa and team have already bought 70% of that material.
Right.
And we know that's going to be scarce because we all believe here that every person who gets one is going to tell 10 more, and it's going to exponentially increase. Yeah. And the batteries and the parts are going to become very scarce. So it's really important to get ahead of that in the supply chain. Otherwise, they'll be limited for too long, and then the prices will be too high for people.
Yeah, yeah. Because those are very critical. I think the critical questions are, and I mean, we've talked to people in the minerals industry, about the shortages, and it is a historically a short term problem because it's about extraction, and we need more of it. And I've always asked, will we run out? Is it all? And the answer is very simple. No, we won't run out. There's plenty of those materials on the planet. It's just that we haven't developed the kind of extraction industry around it to the scale that we need it. But that is happening now. But the other, I think, equally important, I was really glad you mentioned it, is the difference between, if you like, the fuel that we've been using for the last 150 years, which is you extract it, you refine it, you burn it, you get some more. With this stuff, once you've got an F150 battery pack, that's not the end of its life. Doesn't matter what happens to it. Even if it's completely worn out after 20 years and you've maybe even repackaged it to use as static storage, the actual materials in it still have a value and still can be used again. I mean, that's fascinating that you're working on a recycling system within your factories, which is also, if it's your batteries, you know what's in them. You're not dealing with someone else's.
And even we're going to practice, even when we launch, we're going to practice with the scrap that we get from battery production. And we're already starting now. So first of all, you learn to do it and get better and better at it. And then when they start coming back en masse, we'll be able to recycle them. Not just Ford, actually, any manufacturer. So but they're just not coming back in any real number yet. Because, we guarantee ours for 8 years with over 70% of its useful charge storage. And of course, we guarantee that. So real life should be much more than 70%. Because, we see them lasting a long time, and they're nothing like a phone battery. They're water cooled, and they're looked after very carefully by a bit of BCM battery management system. And so that looks after them, and it understands how they're used and the temperatures and all those things. So that's what makes them last much longer. And they're built for purpose. So I see them lasting a very long time, perhaps outlasting the vehicles. And then, later on, they can also, all our batteries at the moment, you can unbolt them and take them out and swap them over quickly. And for us, that's really important because in the commercial space, you can't be without your vehicle a long time, and they're usually upfitted, which means they've had lots of modifications to do their work. And so you can't just swap them for another vehicle. So we can change a battery in less time than changing a gearbox, half a day. Wow. And because we have a dealer network, we've trained that network, and they're able to do that. And that's really important to commercial customers. And we think that's using our competitive advantage as a company, because we do have that network. So another reason why that's important for Ford is that ties to the assets we've got and ties to using that. So, and customers have told us how important that is. So it's all emerging. And I would say the space that we need help in is communication, because I tried it out on hundreds of people who said, I'm not interested. And then I show them it and show them what it's like to live with it, and they flip quickly, like an iPhone user. In fact, I tried finding the most negative people I could find. And I had one that I found he was a really petrol head, we would call. So I said, you should try this Mustang Mach-E, and I'm just not interested. You don't understand. My father did drag racing, and there's 3 generations of racing. I'm just not interested. I said, please, would you give me a few hours, just try to coach. Listen, I'm just not interested. Well, you're at work, so just call it work, okay? Take the car. He took the car away, And he came back 4 hours later, and he walked up with his mouth open, handed me the keys, and said, "The new sound of performance is silence." And I was like, "Oh my!"
Wow.
So, and then proceeded to tell me about how it felt and the torque build up and how it was rear biased. And I said, "You're talking about," I put it to you, "you're not a petrol head. You're a performance enthusiast.
Yeah.
That's what you are. And you just found out that the performance is greater than you've ever experienced. So now that's why you like it." And he said, "Damn, that's it." So we've done lots of that with people to see ultimately will they like the vehicles, and almost everybody does. But many people haven't come round to the thought, I want one yet, or they don't know why they want one yet. And just like the iPhones, they didn't know why they wanted an iPhone until they experienced an iPhone. And so I think education is one part, and the other part is the infrastructure, because you don't see chargers as you drive around, so people don't think they're there. And so the computer in the car does. And really, they're already viable for most people's lives. If you have over a 300-mile EPA or a 370 WLTP, which is the standard in Europe, if you have one of those vehicles, they're suitable for most people's lives already.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's chargers everywhere, and if you can charge them at home, then they're even better. But a lot of people don't know that yet. So education is, I think, the next barrier, and I think people are going to love them.
Yeah. Because I loved it. I mean, I don't think it was a commercial as such, but there was a video that you released a few years ago before the F-150 was launched or came out, certainly. And it was in a rail yard where there was a train. That was so well done, because the dudes, that's what reminded me, is all the dudes came out and going, and then when it was their faces when the woman told them, this is electric. And they didn't even say anything. They just went, and then it towed a train, not a truck or anything, a train full of F-150s.
It was. And do you know how that happened? We were sat in Team Edison, and we were getting ready, and we were getting ready to convince everybody about a truck. And people kept, when we met with customers, they said, "Oh, is it like a eco EV? Oh, it can't be strong." Right? And so we'd realised, it's very strong. It's much stronger than the gas one, actually, but they're somehow relating it to eco. And I said, if one more person asked me, can it tow? I'm going to explode. Can we just tow a train or something and just get rid of that? And then we said, why don't we tow a train? So before we asked too many people, we said, let's go tow a train. And we said, will it tow a train? We're like, we don't know. We don't know. Let's see if it will tow a train. So we got a prototype. We hooked it to a train, a really big train, and then we tested it. And guess what? It towed it. And it was quite easy. And there's some physics in that. I learned some physics there about what tow you have, and you use a slightly flexible tow rope. Yes. And then we said, well, why don't we fill it with something? Because it could do that easily. So they filled it with F-150s over the last 50 years, right? And then, do you know what? That vehicle was turned down to 3/4 of its power.
Wow.
We turned it down because all four wheels were spinning too easily. So we turned it down to 3/4, and that was better. And then we said, how can we make it fun? So we got Linda Zhang, our chief program engineer, and we said, let's go and have some fun, right? So we got the guys out there who were truck drivers, and you can see the video on the internet, right? And then she tows the truck with ease. And after that, people didn't ask me, can it tow?
Yeah,
and it spurred lots of great discussion about, you couldn't have towed that on a road and all those things. Yes, of course we know. But it just was a stunt, and it was fun. And it told people that, hey, these electric vehicles are powerful.
Yeah.
That thing can tow 10,000 pounds. But furthermore, it can do it up a 25% grade with no effort at all. You can stop and restart, zero effort. If you try that with petrol, you're revving the engine, and it's hard to do, and you need a lot of skill. So we did that for fun, to make a point. Somebody else said you can't use it in the cold. So we went out to not Netherlands, Norway, and we raced it on an ice lake. That was fun. In minus 20 degrees, and so on. And then somebody told us that you can't charge them in the wet, so we did a kind of these. We try and kill some of these myths, really, and do it in a fun way.
Yeah, I mean, because it is extraordinary, and also I've noticed they change over time. There was a time early on when, and it's completely understandable, people said, "Oh, range anxiety." Well, I had the first Nissan Leaf. Yes, if you're trying to drive more than about 70 miles in a Nissan Leaf, you've got range anxiety. Comes with the territory. But then that's kind of faded out. I never hear people say that now. They now say the charging infrastructure, which again is a perfectly, as you were saying, perfectly legitimate concern. But it's also, if you've never driven an electric car and you haven't seen the maps that show you where all the charges are, you can quite easily drive around in the UK, for instance, and not see a charger. We are just starting to actually install actual hubs that look like a gas station, that have lights and a big canopy and a shop. And I think it's 3 of them now, and we're getting more of those coming. So that kind of gives a clue. And always, this is a really interesting thing that I'm sure you've experienced as well, is when there is a visible charging hub. There is one in West London, on Fulham Road. There's, I think, 13 or 14 rapid chargers there. Loads of people in that area have bought electric cars since that's been put in, because they go, well, I can't charge it at my house. This is all narrow streets with, terraced housing, but they can charge it down the corner, and they can go and get a lettuce and a pint of milk because there's a store there, and it makes a completely different argument. But it is that, you're right. I mean, that's basically what I guess we've been doing on the Fully Charged Show for the last 12 years, is trying to go, I know there's, it's different. You can't compare it. All those discussions are a very big part of the process.
Yeah, I think I always think about this and how we convince people, and I do it with everybody I meet to see the different points of view and why they think it's not right for them. I think the most powerful one, it really is that everyone who gets one will not go back. And just as a human being, anything that every person who gets one never goes back kind of tells you there's something exciting about that, right? It tells you there must be something there. And you can, of course, tell them that you are different to everybody else, and there's a reason why it's not for you. But, that might not be true. When I first spoke to people about iPhones and smartphones, they said to me, well, my flip phone lasts for 3 days and your iPhone is 1 day. I go, okay, good. After they got introduced to an iPhone and they loved it, I said to them, well, how about it only charges 1 day? They said, well, I go to bed anyway, so I plug it in.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of whether you want it or not. And we came from a point of view, we want to make you want these vehicles.
Yeah.
And then you're interested, and then you try it and you're hooked. And that's because you get the heart first. That's the idea. So with the Mach E, that's a Mach E GT makes parts of your body move that you couldn't.
It's never happened before.
that is 0 to 60 in about 3.48 seconds using that rollout cycle. Most people have never driven a car like that, and it makes you feel it in your eyeballs, and it's really great fun. And so, and for that price, I mean, to get that kind of performance, you would have been in a very high-end supercar,
very expensive,
not long ago, right? So it brings that accessibility for people, and I kind of got a soft spot for these Focus RS and the rally cars, and
of course,
for those. And it reminds me a bit of those. And then the Transit, the commercial, so they're all about cost of ownership and don't break down and maintenance. And then the F150 is all about utility, right? So it can do more things than anybody else's car. And then you experience how it drives and you want it. So every one of our vehicles is going to have those elements about it that tempt you in. And then when you get it, you realize how much you love it. So that, while electrics are in this period, it's really important that the brands get them on board now, because people are going to love them so much that they may stick with that brand for a while. So we see it's important, and that's why we're putting so much effort into it quickly now to make sure we have the vehicle and product out there.
No, it is fantastic. And so I'll let you go soon, because it's been fantastic catching up with you and seeing what's going on. But the one area that I am probably overly obsessed with, but is the vehicle, the V2X, the vehicle to whatever, your house, the grid, the local network or whatever, or a business. I mean, particularly in a business, as you mentioned, with commercial vehicles. But is that something that you think will become a standard feature across the future Ford range? Is that something that's on the cards?
That is a really exciting feature. So, I'll tell you a little secret. The bidirectional system in the F150 Lightning, if you have that system installed in your home, we sold that as a backup power solution. which is very, very needed in US because the lines are above the ground and they do go out. And when they go out, they go out for 5 days. And that was quite a shock to me when I moved here. I hadn't had that in Europe for 20 years.
Yeah.
But they go out for 5 days and it's cold and your family have to do those things. So it's really, really useful. But that system was developed as a cloud-controlled system, which can be triggered from an app or from anybody. And so actually, later on, that system can become an energy management solution where it powers, first of all, it could power the home for a period when the electricity is expensive and then take back power at night. That alone would save you a lot of money every day.
A huge amount of money. Yeah.
And then the next step is pass back to the grid. But and technically it's capable of that. It's grid tied, although the benefits are not there at the moment to pass to the grid because you get a transmission cost. And you can save a lot of money already by just powering the home during the peak times and allowing you to go on a cheaper tariff. And so in US we started there because they've also got that power outage problem, and so it's super compelling. But we can bring it later with energy management everywhere, and that's going to become more compelling for people. And we have some things in the pipeline that make that even more attractive to people because it costs about half the cost of a home generator at the moment. And a lot of people in the US would like to put a home generator in, but they can't afford it. So that's why it's easiest there and very compelling. But in Europe, people wouldn't be putting in a generator. So therefore, it's low cost. So we're looking at solutions that are much lower cost that will be more mainstream for people. But that's all coming. And once you get into that, I mean, I got the truck and then I said, I've got to have the backup power. And I got that. I said, why don't I have solar? I should be charging it with solar. And I've got solar. Yeah. You really get into that world. And I can monitor now, and on a good day, the solar charges my vehicle or powers the whole home, and it has reduced my bill by a significant amount. And there's something nice about feeling that you're making your own power here.
Yeah. No, it's something that we couldn't. If you go back 20 years, you could not imagine that. That's effectively like having your own oil well and refinery in your backyard.
Yes, and imagine if you looked at, there are solutions of power walls, that type of thing.
Yeah.
There may be 12 kilowatts, maybe 10 usable. Well, an F150 Lightning is 130 kilowatts.
Right.
So you have, you already own it, a free battery.
Yes.
An immense battery. And if we can unlock the usage of that battery for other things, it's very, very compelling. And so, that's something we're very interested in, and frankly, customers are very interested in.
Yeah, and I mean, from your research on the topic, I mean, promise this is my last question, but because I know there were some people would say to me in the past when about vehicles to grid, oh, you're just going to wear the battery out because you're going to be doing more charge and discharge cycles. But from what I've also heard is because the strain on the battery, if you're say running a house, it's not that big. It's not like you're accelerating an F-150 at full pelt. It's a tiny amount of power coming out of a very big battery that will barely notice that kind of change.
Well, a US house probably has more furnaces and so on, and that can last up to 10 days. So imagine that 10 days to run the battery down. And of course, you can run the battery down at full pelt in 3-4 hours. So
when you're driving it,
and if you are to manage it properly, within certain areas, then there's no reason why it causes excessive wear. And we will gradually increase more of that as we also learn about that, because yes, we will look after the battery for you and make sure, because I'm sure people will be buying secondhand electric cars and they want to know the battery quality. Of course they will. So that'll be an important thing, and we are looking after that. And that's why we're doing this in stages. We won't give everything on the first day. But for backup power, that's less often. So yes, we give everything. On the energy management, we may give a bit less at first to make sure we protect your battery. And the customer will have choice. They'll have their control over that as well. Yeah.
That is fantastic. I mean, it's really, what's been a joy for me is just hearing your enthusiasm for it and how, what an exciting world it is that you're exploring and you're developing there, which is great. Because I mean, in a sense, I've often said this to big manufacturers, people who work for big companies. There was a time when you've got a new model coming out and it's got a different front fender and lights and a different back something. But essentially, underneath, it was exactly the same car as it had been 2 years ago. And what you're seeing now is, I see it as another industrial revolution, because it goes across the board. It's a huge
really
change.
is. We saw the potential some years ago. It's like a new career. I've worked on lots of cars in lots of places. I was in Germany for 10 years. It's like a complete new career. And this is phase one. As I mentioned, the things we are developing now are next level. People had not expected to come, because when you fuse the software with the technology into product, there is going to be products you couldn't have imagined before. And that's what we're working on. We're working on things that you've got to have it. You see what it does and you've got to have it. Okay. And then you, if you haven't moved to EV by that point, you'll then discover all the other benefits of EV and you'll be ecstatic. And so that's our plan. And we're doing that in many areas, areas that suit our company, because there's certain things we're good at and we want to lean into those things. So it's a super exciting time, rather busy, I'd say.
I bet.
But we prefer it that way.
Brilliant. No, real joy talking to you, Darren. Thank you so much for your time today. It's really good, and good luck with it. And I can't wait to see what comes next.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed that. It was really fascinating to talk to Darren. What I'm hoping is we can get him to come to one of our live shows in North America, maybe San Diego or Vancouver. Just such a fascinating guy. And what they're doing is so exciting in Ford. And I really want to go there. I don't think I can, but I would really want Ricky Roy to go to their factories. It's nothing better than going around a car factory. It's the best thing in the world. Anyway, that's it. I did the subscribey thing at the beginning, but, tell your mates anyway. And that's all. I could mention Patreon, but I'm not going to. As always, if you have been, thank you for listening.